The city of Stuttgart was on an ambitious path to becoming a transport hub in the heart of Europe. As part of this journey, the city is in the process of completely reconfiguring how railways run through its center. This involves the construction of tunnels, bridges, updated foundations, and an impressive new park. However, it has been 27 years since that trip began, and the expectations of monetary gain have been caught off guard by the realities of bringing the project to a successful conclusion. In Germany, like in many other countries, huge infrastructure projects that haven't gone quite according to plan are nothing new, and the specter of Berlin's Brandenburg Airport hangs large in the minds of the general people. In this video, we will take a look at Stuttgart 21, one of the world's most remarkable and longest-running railway projects, and one that has been the subject of both praise and criticism. Stuttgart 21. The Stuttgart 21 project is a mammoth undertaking, owing to almost every metric. In essence, the central station, which is located in the middle of Germany's sixth biggest city, is undergoing renovations so that it may be converted from an overground station into a subterranean hub through which trains can travel under the city without stopping. This requires the installation of 8 underground-through platforms that will lead in each of the 4 directions, as well as the placement of a 7-story building on an entirely new foundation to make room for several new underground tracks. Previously, the terminus platforms were located above ground. In all, there will be the construction of 18 new bridges in addition to 16 tunnels and cuts. Along with lines leading to Stuttgart's airport and exhibition center, the building is also under place on 3 other smaller stations located across the city. As if that weren't enough, 60 kilometers of the brand new track is currently being installed as part of an effort to modernize the high-speed train route that runs between Stuttgart and Ulm. The top of the subterranean hall at Central Station will be shaped like a big shell, and it will be held up by a total of 28 enormous support columns. They will be topped with steel glass transparent covers, which will enable natural light to enter the building and provide attractive aspects for the new green park that will sit on top of the refurbished station. The project's eventual extraordinary complexity may be traced back to a goal that was first rather straightforward. The central station in Stuttgart was first constructed as a terminal rather than a thorough station when it was first constructed. This may have made sense at the time, but it is no longer compatible with the city's position as a vital center for commerce and manufacturing and as one of the principal destinations on the high-speed train line between Paris and Bratislava in continental Europe. Due to the existing layout of the station, numerous lines all come in and finish there, which requires passengers who are continuing their travels to switch trains and requires foreign services to travel in the other direction, back up the line. This issue is going to be resolved by the implementation of Stuttgart 21, which will transform the station into a significant and well-linked through hub in the geographic center of Europe. A key piece of infrastructure that was built in the middle of the 19th century and is located on a critical route into the city will be brought up to current standards as a result of this plan, which will also increase capacity. The plan will connect Stuttgart and Ulm with a new track. Even though the idea of Stuttgart 21 may make excellent sense from an economic standpoint, the road leading up to its construction has been a difficult one. Although the project is not alone in the history of overrunning infrastructure projects, it is among the most noteworthy in Europe, along with London's Crossrail and Berlin's Brandenburg Airport. The initial announcement of Stuttgart 21 was made in the year 1994, and it has been necessary to make improvements on the line to Ulm ever since the 1980s. The construction eventually started in 2010, and it was expected to be finished in 2019, but the current target is 2025. This is not a good look for a project that was designed to ring in the 21st century and was titled appropriately. In 2009, before construction had begun, many people in Stuttgart were astonished by the predicted €4.5 billion price tag. That is already spiraling out of control, and it is estimated that the final sum will be at least €7.6 billion. It has been suggested that the increase is due to a combination of factors, including delays caused by resistance, unexpectedly high construction expenses, and the necessity of adhering to newly enacted environmental legislation to conserve the region's rich biodiversity. Another source of contention is the project's influence, both physically and aesthetically, on the city of Stuttgart. Even though the eventual outcome is meant to be helpful, many people of the city have not taken kindly to the fact that a significant portion of their city has been turned into a gigantic construction site for over a decade. In order to create room for the new construction, portions of the historic structure, which are considered to be an important architectural monument, were demolished. This choice drew more criticism. Because of all this concern, the very foundations of the project are being called into question, and some people are contending that it is just not worth the billions of euros in costs and the years of disruption it would cause. Despite this sentiment, many people have concluded that giving up at this point would be a waste of the investment that has been made up to this point. Controversy. Since the idea of a through-the-station for long-distance trains running beneath the current station was initially presented in the middle of the 1980s, the Stuttgart 21 project has been a heated issue among both local politicians and residents of the nearby region. On August 26, 2010, demolition activities and a protest rally took place at the north wing of the Stuttgart Hauptbahnhof. On August 26, 2010, demolition activities and a protest rally took place at the north wing of the Stuttgart Hauptbahnhof. Since the latter half of 2006, DB, the federal government, the government of Baden-Württemberg, and the city of Stuttgart have been engaged in discussions over the distribution of the expenses associated with the project. On July 19, 2007, the federal government, the state of Baden-Württemberg, and DB made the announcement that the project had been authorized and given their approval. The political opponents of Wolfgang Schuster were quick to condemn the mayor of Stuttgart for retreating on a promise he made before the municipal elections in 2004. That pledge was to enable the public of Stuttgart to determine the destiny of Stuttgart 21 if the additional expenses of the project amounted to more than €200 million. Shortly after the announcement of the financial deal, the political opponents of Wolfgang Schuster were eager to blame the mayor of Stuttgart for backtracking on the promise. Boris Palmer, who was running as a candidate for Alliance 90, the Greens at the time, withdrew his name from consideration for the second round of voting after hearing the pledge and suggested to his followers that they vote for Schuster instead. A petition and public demonstrations were both initiated in October 2007, with the petition being funded by private persons and the public demonstrations being supported by Alliance 90, the Greens, as well as a range of citizens and environmental organizations. The objective was to gather 20,000 signatures to persuade local legislators to bring the matter up in a vote at the community level. However, political fighting ensued over whether or not the matter could even be determined by a municipal vote in the first place once the petition received 67,000 signatures. The park, which was designed by Nikolaus Friedrich von Thorot as an important component of a treasured green area that links the central city to the banks of the Neckar River. It is anticipated that the building of this project will take at least 10 years, and during that period, links to other park areas of the city will be severed. These park areas are collectively referred to as the Green U because of their U-shaped layout. Members of the International Council on Monuments and Sites declared in November 2009 that the Hauptbahnhof was a structure of extraordinary excellence whose integrity should be preserved because of this. Since 2009, there have been a variety of demonstrations held in opposition to the contentious project. On September 30, 2010, the police deployed a water cannon, pepper spray, and batons against protesters, which resulted in the injury of hundreds of protesters. The next day saw the greatest demonstration against the project to this point, with more than 50,000 people taking part in it. Even before that crescendo, one of the architects, Frei Otto, had called for a halt to the project, citing a 2003 report that said the ground in the region is too unstable for large-scale subterranean construction. There are concerns that the project's price tag might balloon beyond €18.70 billion. On November 27, 2011, a referendum asked voters in the state of Baden-Württemberg if they wanted the government to stop supporting the project. The majority of voters opposed this kind of withdrawal. Some see this as conclusive evidence that the majority of people support the project, while others point out that it could be due in part to misleading wording or to questionable allegations that were made before the referendum. Indeed, in a pivotal referendum held in 2011, the public was given the option to vote for or against the continuation of the works, and they chose the former, resulting in a more quiet majority that prevailed over the voices of dissent. After 10 years have passed since the height of the resistance, there is now a more tired desire to finish what has been started. Important checkpoints are almost reached, such as the goal of finishing the primary tunneling construction. It is a great shame that the wonderful architectural, engineering, and construction work that is going into Stuttgart 21 is presently recognized more for its problems than for the work that is being done on it. However, just like with so many difficult infrastructure projects, the passage of time will most likely teach us to be grateful for its advantages while helping us forget the costs that were incurred. Alright, that's a wrap for this video. Thanks for watching. If you have enjoyed the video, consider leaving a like and subscribe to the channel for more interesting updates. See you in the next one.